Hey everybody, welcome back to Battlestar Galactica Remembered, and today we are going to be talking about more modern Battlestar Galactica. And what do I mean by that? I mean how Battlestar Galactica ultimately came back into the public's consciousness, and yes, even onto the television sets with the Sci-Fi Channel's Battlestar Galactica reimagining. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the reimagining, just for the record. I never got into that show. I'm sorry. I was a Battlestar purist, an original, and so I could not bring myself to watch the reimagined Battlestar. But everything that happened from Richard Hatch's novels to the revival of Battlestar Galactica, ultimately to the Sci-Fi Channel show, we all owe it, I think, to Richard Hatch. I mean, let's face it. In the mid-90s, he starts, I believe he was like doing some comic book stuff, like writing for some stuff with comic books with Battlestar Galactica. And eventually he kind of took those stories and those ideas about a continuation, really, of bringing the story, 20 years into the future. This was now the mid to late 90s. And so ultimately he comes up with the idea of writing an actual novel, a continuation novel. He gets the deal, and of course with Christopher Golden, who was one of the novelists who helped him out with the first couple of novels, they come up with Battlestar Galactica Armageddon, the brand new Battlestar Galactica continuation novel. And it was released in August of 1997. And so that's kind of, from that point on, everything starts ramping up. And why is that? Well, because Richard Hatch started believing that there's so much clamor for it, a lot of fans. You remember how we've talked about it, that we were just left hanging after that one season. We wanted more. So Richard Hatch kind of tapped into that, I think, and he came up with the idea that he was going to pitch it to Universal to bring back Battlestar Galactica. And of course, the concept that he came up with is the kind of the topic of what we're talking about today, and that is what he called Battlestar Galactica, The Second Coming. And this is his really Hollywood-produced movie trailer, so to speak, for a movie that, well, didn't really exist. But he put this trailer together. We all know the story. If you were around back in the late 90s, he, refinanced his house. He put, tens of thousands of dollars into it. He got people like, Dean Cundey, Hollywood, director of photography and all that kind of stuff, to work on it, and they wrote out a little story about what the overall storyline was going to be, and we got Battlestar Galactica, The Second Coming. And the story basically goes that for a long time now, Commander Adama has died. Apollo, just like in the novels, Apollo is now commander of the fleet, and so the Cylons have been gone. They haven't been pursuing them anymore. But in the trailer, it shows that what's happened was the Cylons had some kind of internal kind of civil war. They've evolved, become deadlier, and now they have come back, right? The second coming of the Cylons. And so they're back. And so the rest of the story details with, Apollo and Colonel Ty, who make appearances there. And they're getting ready. Bo J, by the way, Jack Stauffer also came out in it. And they're trying to get ready, the younger generation, the next generation who have never seen the Cylons. They've never fought the Cylons, and now they have to. And they have to go to war, go to battle, just like the previous generation did, and fight for their very lives. And so it's a really cool concept. And Richard Hatch completed the trailer, and from what I understand, there was about 30 minutes of footage that was actually shot. Now, I don't know if all 30 minutes was ever completed, like with CGI and graphics and special effects and all that. I would kind of perhaps guess that it wasn't. If any of you out there worked on it or something like that, please share your stories in the comments. We'd love to hear them a little bit more from someone who was actually involved in the inner circle, if you will, with special effects or CGI. But from what I understand, the 30-minute version has never been publicly released, but only the 5+ minute version has, and that's the finished trailer of The Second Coming. And so Richard Hatch world premiered it at, if I'm correct, it was at Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia, in the summer of 1999. And yours truly was there. I was there. That was the first Dragon Con that I ever went to, by the way. And I've been to a couple more, but that one was the big one. You know, all the actors and all that were there. You know, Richard Hatch was there, Dirk Benedict, Anne Lockhart, Herb Jefferson, Jack Stafford, you know, you name it. All those big ones were there. And so he premiered it at Dragon Con, and it was absolutely amazing. If you were there, by the way, back in 1999, put down in the comments. I'd love to hear your story about your attendance at that, and if you were at the premiere of The Second Coming. I'll just share my reactions to a couple of things. Number one, I remember when that finished, and everybody just, you know, exploded with applause and cheering and everything. I remember the first thing was I had tears streaming down my face. And that led directly to the second thing. I was there with my wife, and I turned to her and said, that is the closest thing to Battlestar Galactica that I've seen that we may get. And unfortunately, I kind of proved prophetic there. Because ultimately, as we know, Battlestar Galactica was given to Ron Moore and the Sci-Fi Channel, and they went with a totally different version of it, a reimagining starting over. And so, yeah, Richard Hatch, you know, I think that all of that, everything that happened at that time, we really do owe to Richard Hatch. And, you know, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2017 at a relatively younger, I mean, he was only 71 years old. I wish he was still around. But everything that happened with Battlestar Galactica happened because of him and his belief and realizing that, you know, there was still just a clamor for that show, and it would have been awesome. Let me tell you, you see from the pictures that I'm showing here as I'm describing it and talking about it, The Second Coming was pretty cool. And you can still see it, by the way. Just go out here on YouTube, type in Battlestar Galactica, The Second Coming, and watch it again. And I have to say, the moment for me in that trailer that I mean, you know, it takes you like right back to, like I said, 1978, 1979, that it was it. And that was, there's this one little shot in there, you may recall if you've seen it. It's where Apollo is standing there and he's talking to and consulting the hologram image of Commander Adama. Oh my goodness. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it right now. That was awesome. That was the true, I love that he did that. That was so cool. To this very day, 25 years later, you know, when I watch it, oh, that little scene just gets me. Because like I said, man, that was the closest to Battlestar that we were going to get. And I'm going to do another video. Interesting thing, just one last little thing here. But, you know, after that, he made the pitch to Universal, as we all know, and they didn't give it to him. But what they did do, you may remember this, in 2001, a couple of years later, the news came out that, you remember this? We were going to get a Battlestar continuation. The Universal Studios, remember this? They made the announcement that they were going to give the franchise that idea to Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer, director and producer of the X-Men and all those movies. And so you remember they were going to do a continuation. They were basically going to pick up a little bit different, slightly different story and everything, but they were basically going to pick up what Richard Hatch was doing. And so, you know, when you really think about it, and I'm going to do a video on that one, by the way, what their plan was, very interesting. And, you know, ultimately, if you think about it, Richard Hatch, although they didn't go with his version, he was successful. He did. He was the spearhead to bringing back Battlestar Galactica. We were going to get the continuation that we wanted with Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer at the helm. And they were already building sets. They were already doing everything in the fall of 2001. You all remember. And what happened, of course, 9/11. September of 2001. And with that, Everything got put on hold. Bryan Singer had to leave, and ultimately Fox, it was going to go through Fox distribution, they pulled out, and instead by 2003, about a year and a half later, Universal, as we said, they give the property to Sci-Fi Channel, and they go with the reimagining. But we were this close. Richard did it. He did do it. So if you think it was a failure or whatever, it really wasn't. We were going to get that continuation. But once again, right? What could have been? They could have brought it back, continuation. They had the idea, to bring Starbuck and everybody back. It was going to be amazing. Like I said, I'm going to do a video soon about that version, Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer's. But anyway, it all started with Richard Hatch having that faith, having that belief. I mean, let's face it, he was the main actor. He always loved that show, just like all of us. He was a fan to the core as well. And he knew that there were still more stories to tell. He told them to the novels, and he wanted to tell them to a new TV show, but that's ultimately what happened. So anyway, but if you look at it in the grand scheme, again, everything that happened, and even the new show that did come back, it came back because of Richard Hatch. And we all owe him that debt of gratitude and all that. But oh man, what could have been, huh? We were that close to getting that continuation that we wanted. But anyway, it was not to be. Seems like that's the way Battlestar Galactica is. Oh, what could have been, but it was not to be. Anyway, long live Battlestar Galactica, and I will see you in the next video.